So, in our last chapter, our blended family drama went from awkward to full blown conspiracy. After my daughter Chloe famously declared, "You're not my dad," to my husband Michael, I ended up standing in a dark hallway listening through her bedroom door, and I heard it. I heard my ex husband, Mark, on the phone with her, whispering the words that changed everything. He's just a temporary problem. Some truths hit you like a punch. This one felt like a quiet poison, seeping into every crack of our fragile new life. My ex-husband wasn't just a ghost from the past. He was an active saboteur, and he was using our daughter as his weapon. I had the proof, the words that could end his game. But what if using that truth meant destroying the very family I was trying to build? So, when Michael saw me standing there looking like I'd just seen a ghost and asked me what was wrong, I did something I had never done with him before. I lied. Nothing, I said. Just thinking. It was the first lie in our new marriage, and it felt heavy, like a stone in my stomach. Today's story is about what happens the morning after that lie. It's about a breakfast so silent it felt like a Cold War negotiation, and about my attempt to build a bridge to my stepson Leo, which backfires so spectacularly it almost burns the whole house down. It's about the first real fight I have with Michael, a fight that plants a tiny seed of doubt in my mind about his perfect first marriage. And that doubt leads me to a place I shouldn't have been in, a dusty attic full of his late wife's things. And it's there, tucked away and forgotten, that I find it. A locked wooden box with her initials on it. A box that my kind, gentle husband becomes terrifyingly desperate to keep me from opening. Stick with me, because today we're going from family drama to full-blown mystery. I'm about to discover that the real ghost in this house isn't the one that I've been tiptoeing around. It's the one that's been locked away in the dark. Let's get into it. The morning after you tell a significant lie to your spouse is quiet. It's a special kind of quiet. Thick, with unspoken words and things you wish you could take back. The air in our kitchen that next morning was so heavy you could have cut it with a butter knife. Our kitchen table didn't feel like a family space. It felt like a negotiation table between three warring nations, and I was the spy with divided loyalties. We were all there, but we were a million miles apart. I kept looking at my daughter, Chloe, and it was this weird mix of anger and overwhelming love. I was furious at her for being so easily manipulated by her father. But my heart also broke for her because she was just a kid, caught in the middle. Every time I looked at her, all I could hear was Mark's voice in my head whispering, "Temporary problem." She must have felt my stare because she just kept her eyes glued to her cereal bowl, refusing to look at me. She knew she was in trouble, but I don't think she understood the half of it. Then there was Michael. He was trying his best to be normal, happy dad, asking about everyone's day, commenting on the weather, trying to spark any kind of conversation. But it was like tossing pebbles into a black hole. No one was biting, and every time he smiled at me, I felt a fresh wave of guilt over the secret I was keeping. I was lying to the one person who was trying the hardest to hold us all together. And finally, there was Leo, my quiet, observant stepson. He just sat there, eating his toast, his eyes darting between me, Chloe, and his dad. He's one of those kids who doesn't miss a thing. He could probably sense the tension better than any of us. He was like a human barometer for dysfunction. And as he watched all of us, this quiet boy who seemed to see right through everyone, I couldn't help but wonder what secrets he was keeping behind those guarded eyes. It was a valuable lesson for me. I realized that my ex-husband's manipulation wasn't just affecting Chloe. It was a poison, and it had seeped into the entire house, creating suspicion and silence between all of us. He was making us all strangers to each other. I knew I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't win a war against my own daughter, especially when she didn't even know she was fighting. So, I decided to try a different strategy. Peace. If I couldn't connect with Chloe, maybe I could try to build a bridge with the one person she seemed to be in constant, silent conflict with. Leo. It seemed like a good idea at the time. It was not. So, after the world's most awkward breakfast, I knew I had to change my approach. I couldn't win a war against my own daughter, especially when she didn't even know she was being used as a soldier. So I decided to try a different strategy. Peace. I figured, if I couldn't get through to Chloe, maybe I could build a bridge with the one person she was in constant silent conflict with, Leo. If he and I could find some common ground, maybe the whole house would feel a little less like a battlefield. Later that afternoon, I saw my chance. He was sitting in the living room, completely absorbed in his sketchbook. He's a really talented artist, and this was the first time I'd seen him so at ease, so in his element. I decided to approach with caution. Like trying to get close to a shy, wild animal. I walked over and peeked over his shoulder. He was drawing a beautiful, detailed landscape. I tried to start on what I thought was safe, common ground. "That's really good, Leo," I said softly. "You have your mom's talent." I made a point to mention her, to show him that I wasn't trying to erase her, that I respected her memory. It felt like the right thing to say. He didn't respond, just kept drawing. So I pushed a little further, trying to open a door. "What was she like? Your mom?" I asked gently. It was like I had just flipped a switch. He slammed his sketchbook shut with a loud thud that made me jump. He looked up at me for the first time, and his eyes were just glacial. All the quiet sadness was gone, replaced with a cold, hard anger. "Don't," he said, his voice low and sharp. "Don't talk about her. You're not allowed to talk about her." He stood up, clutching his sketchbook to his chest like a shield, and with that, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there in the middle of the living room, completely stunned and feeling about 2 inches tall. It was a total, brutal rejection. The olive branch I had offered had been snapped in half and thrown back in my face. And of course, because my timing is just perfect, that was the exact moment Michael chose to walk into the room. He saw the look on my face, saw his son storming up the stairs, and he immediately went to Leo, put a comforting hand on his shoulder as they disappeared down the hall together. He didn't even look at me. He didn't ask what happened. He just saw his son was hurting, and he went to him. I know he was just being a good father, but in that moment, it felt like a choice. A siding of A-teams. He had chosen his original family, and I was once again the outsider. It was a painful lesson. I had entered this marriage thinking my biggest challenge would be my ex-husband. But now, a new, uncomfortable thought
started to creep in. I was standing in a house dedicated to the memory of a perfect wife with a husband who was fiercely protective of that memory. And it made me wonder, what exactly was he so desperate to protect? Later that evening, after Leo had been locked in his room for hours, Michael finally came to talk to me. I think he expected me to just understand, to be the patient, supportive new wife. But after the day I'd had, the Cold War breakfast, the weight of my own lie, and then being completely shut down by Leo, my patience was worn tissue paper thin. He came into our bedroom and started to explain his side. He said he saw his son hurting, and his first instinct was just to protect him. I learned later that he didn't realize that in protecting one person, he was building a wall against another. But at that moment, all I felt was that wall. "You just took his side," I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "You didn't even ask me what happened. You just saw him upset and assumed I was the one at fault." He looked surprised by my anger. "He's a grieving kid, Jessica," he said, his voice rising a little. "His memory is all he has. It's a sensitive topic. You can't just barge in and start asking questions about his mother." And that's when I snapped. It felt like all the frustration, all the feeling of being an outsider just boiled over. And I'm your wife. Am I not allowed to even exist in this house? Am I not allowed to speak or ask a question without feeling like I'm stepping on the ghost of your perfect marriage? The moment I said it, the words just hung there in the air between us. Perfect marriage. It was the first time I'd said it out loud, and it changed the whole dynamic of the room. I saw a flash of something in his eyes. It wasn't just sadness, it was defensiveness, a sudden, desperate need to protect an image. "It's not about being perfect," he said, but his voice was tight. "It's about respecting what was." But was it really that simple? The more he defended it, the more I started to question it. Was their marriage really that flawless love story everyone seemed to believe it was? Or was that just the story he told everyone? And maybe the story he told himself. His desperation to keep her memory pristine and untouched suddenly felt less grief and more like PR management. It was a small, unsettling thought, a tiny seed of doubt planted in the back of my mind. What was he really protecting? The memory of his happy marriage, or the truth of a more complicated one? That seed of doubt was a dangerous thing, because when you feel like an outsider in your own home, when you're lonely and hurt, you start looking for answers in places you probably shouldn't. They say idle hands are the devil's workshop. For me, a broken heart and a quiet afternoon were about to lead me to the most forbidden territory in the entire house. They say idle hands are the devil's workshop. Well, for me, a broken heart, a quiet afternoon, and a deep-seated feeling of being an unwanted guest in my own home led me to a place I absolutely, positively should not have been: the attic. After my fight with Michael, the house felt charged, heavy with tension. I needed to escape, but I couldn't leave. So I decided to carve out a little space for myself. Michael had said the attic was mostly storage, so I thought maybe I could clear a corner, put a comfy chair there, create a little Jessica zone. A place where I wasn't stepping on anyone's memories. So I pulled down the rickety ladder and climbed into the forbidden territory. The moment my head poked through the opening, I was hit by that classic attic smell, a mix of old wood, dust, and forgotten time. The light was soft, hazy, coming through a round window, and the room was filled from floor to ceiling with the life of another woman. It was Sarah's attic. It wasn't just random junk. It was her. Canvases leaning against the wall, some half-finished, a dusty violin case propped in the corner, stacks of art books, their pages yellowed with age. In another corner, a rack of her old clothes, still covered in plastic from the dry cleaners, like ghosts waiting for a party they'd never attend. I ran my hand over the violin case, imagining her playing it. I flipped through a book, noticing notes she had scribbled in the margins. Every single object was a piece of her, a puzzle piece of this talented, beautiful, perfect woman I was now living in the shadow of. And I felt this strange mix of emotions. Part of me was deeply curious. I wanted to know who she was, this woman my husband had loved so much. But another part of me felt overwhelming guilt. I felt like an archaeologist disturbing the sacred tomb. This was her space, her memories. And here I was, the intruder, rifling through her past because I was unhappy with my present. It's a strange thing to feel jealous of a ghost. You can't compete. You can't argue. She is frozen in time as this perfect, idealized version of herself, while you're just you. Flawed, messy, very much alive. I was about to give up and go back downstairs, convinced this was a terrible idea. But I told myself, just move one last pile of blankets, see if the space is even usable. And that's when I saw it. Tucked away in the darkest corner, almost as if it was meant to be forgotten forever, a small wooden box with her initials carved on the lid. I was just about to give up on my whole attic retreat idea. The place was basically a shrine to Sarah, and I felt like I was trespassing on holy ground. I decided I would just move one last pile of old, dusty blankets to see if the corner was even big enough for a chair. But then I saw it. Tucked away under that pile of blankets, hidden in the darkest corner of the attic, almost as if it was meant to be forgotten forever, was a box. It wasn't a cardboard moving box like the others. This one was different. It was a beautiful, dark wooden box about the size of a shoebox, with intricate carvings all over it. It looked old and important. And on the lid, there was a small, tarnished brass plate with two initials elegantly engraved on it. S.H. Sarah Harrison. My heart started to beat a little faster. I picked it up. It was heavy, and it was locked. There was a small, ornate little lock on the front and no key in sight. I gave it a gentle shake. I could hear the soft, promising rustle of paper inside. It wasn't jewelry. It wasn't trinkets. It was words. Or a diary. It was words. And this is the moment where the good, respectable version of me should have just put it back. But then the little devil on my shoulder whispered, "Really? After being treated like an outsider all week? After being told you can't even speak her name without upsetting someone? This isn't just a box. This is answers." And the devil won. Because after feeling so powerless, so unwelcome, so much on the outside of this perfect little family circle, finding this box felt like finding a key to understanding the house I was living in, the man I had just married, and the perfect ghost I was constantly being compared to. My curiosity, mixed with a little bit of hurt and resentment, completely overpowered my guilt. I knew I couldn't open it myself, but I also knew I couldn't just leave it there. I tucked the box under my arm,
my heart pounding in my chest. I was going to take it downstairs. I was going to ask him about it. I wanted transparency. I wanted to be a partner. I had no idea I was about to walk straight into a confrontation that would make me question everything I thought I knew about him. So there I was, standing at the bottom of the attic stairs, holding this locked wooden box that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. My curiosity had officially won the war against my common sense. I couldn't just put it back, not after everything that had happened. I brought the box downstairs, my heart pounding in my chest with every step. I walked into the kitchen and placed it right in the middle of the kitchen island, like a piece of evidence in a courtroom. I was going to ask him about it. I wanted transparency. I wanted to be a team. Right on cue, Michael walked in, humming a little tune, probably thinking about some architectural design. He saw me, smiled, and then his smile dropped. "Where did you find this?" His voice was sharp, accusatory, so harsh it made me take a step back. "You shouldn't have been up there. That's private." Before I could even respond, he strode over, snatched the box off the counter, and clutched it to his chest. It was a sudden, aggressive movement, so out of character for the calm, gentle man I thought I had married. It honestly scared me. This wasn't the reaction of a man protecting painful memories. This was the reaction of a man protecting a secret, a big one. I decided then and there that I was going to be direct. No more secrets, no more tiptoeing. I was his wife. I deserved to be treated like a partner, not a guest. But the lesson here is a tough one. Sometimes when you go looking for transparency, you find a locked door instead. And the way a person reacts when you knock on that door tells you everything you need to know. He was holding the box like it contained all the secrets of the universe. And I was left standing there in the kitchen, my request for partnership rejected, my trust beginning to crack, and his next words were about to break it completely. So there he was, standing in our kitchen, clutching this old wooden box to his chest like it was the nuclear launch codes. The kind, gentle man I had married was gone, replaced by a stranger with panicked eyes. I learned later what he was thinking in that moment, that all he could think about was protecting his son, Leo, protecting the idealized memory he had of his mother. He made a split-second decision to lie, to build a wall around that memory. And he didn't realize that the lie he was about to tell would eventually cost him everything. But in that moment, all I saw was a man who was hiding something from me. I tried to keep my voice even. "What's in it, Michael?" I asked. "Why are you acting like this?" He took a deep breath, trying to regain his composure, but it was too late. The mask had already slipped. He wouldn't look at me, his eyes fixed on some random spot on the refrigerator. "It's nothing," he said, his voice too casual, too forced. "Just old medical records. Things from her illness. It's painful stuff. That's all." He finally looked back at me, tried on a sad, sympathetic smile. "It's better left in the past, Jess, for everyone's sake." And that was the lie. It was a good lie. I'll give him that. Plausible.
thoughtful. It even made him look like a caring husband, trying to shield his wife and son from unnecessary pain. But I knew, with every fiber of my being, that it was a lie. You don't react with raw panic over old medical records. You don't look terrified unless there's something to fear. That was the moment the first real crack appeared in the foundation of our new marriage. It wasn't about the box anymore. It was about the lie. He had a choice: to let me in, to face the past with me, and he chose to shut me out. He chose to protect a secret over trusting his wife. That's the painful truth about trust. It's not just about loyalty. It's about choosing each other, even when it's hard. And in that moment, Michael didn't choose me. He took the box and hid it away in his office, thinking the secret was safe again. But he forgot one very important thing about his perfect artistic wife. Artists, especially the ones with secrets, have a tendency to hide things in the most beautiful and unexpected places.
So he took the box and hid it away in his office, locking the door behind him. He thought the secret was safe again. He thought the conversation was over. But he forgot one very important thing about his perfect artistic wife. Artists are clever, and they know how to hide things in plain sight. That night, I couldn't sleep. His lie kept replaying in my head. The image of his panicked face, the forced casualness in his voice. I got out of bed around 2 a.m., when the house was completely still, and went downstairs. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. I just needed space to think. I wandered through the living room, and my eyes landed on the bookshelf, filled with all of Sarah's art history books. There was one in particular, a big, heavy coffee table book about the Italian Renaissance. Beautiful, bound in dark green leather. I don't know why. Call it intuition, a gut feeling, the universe whispering in my ear. I pulled that specific book off the shelf. It felt heavier than it should. I sat down on the couch and started flipping through the pages. Paintings of Madonnas and angels, but I wasn't really seeing them. Then, somewhere in the middle of the book, something small and metallic slipped out and landed on the cushion next to me with a soft thud. I froze. I looked down. A tiny, ornate, old-fashioned brass key. The kind of key you see in antique shops. The kind that goes to a diary or a small wooden chest. The kind of key that would fit that beautiful carved box perfectly. She had hidden it there. In a book about saints and angels, she had hidden the key to her secrets. I picked it up. It was cool to the touch. And in that moment, I felt something strange. Power. He had lied to me. He had hidden the box. He had shut me out. But now, I had the key. I had the power to unlock his secret and hers, all on my own. I could walk into his office right now, find that box, and know the truth in 5 minutes. But that was the question. Did I really want to know what was inside? It's one thing to be lied to.
It's another thing entirely to go searching for the truth when you suspect you won't like what you find. I had a choice. I could put the key back, go to bed, and try to live with the lie. Try to rebuild the trust that had already cracked. Or I could open the box and face whatever was inside, knowing it could tear our new family apart forever. Suddenly, my ex-husband's petty games seemed so small, so insignificant, because the real threat wasn't the man trying to get into our house. It was the secrets already locked inside.
Sitting there in the dead of night, holding this tiny brass key, everything became crystal clear. This whole time, I thought the biggest threat to our new family was the outside world. I was worried about my ex-husband's scheming, about teenage drama, about the impossible task of blending two different lives. But I was wrong. In that moment, all of Mark's petty games seemed so small. The real threat wasn't the man trying to get into our house. It was the secrets already locked inside these walls. I had married a man I thought I knew, but I was quickly realizing he might be a stranger with a locked box full of secrets. He had lied to me. He had hidden this box from me. He had chosen to protect a past I knew nothing about instead of building a future with me based on trust. And now, I had the key, the power to unlock it all. This is one of those moments that defines a relationship, isn't it? I stood at a crossroads. Down one path, I could put the key back, go to bed, and try to live with the lie, hoping that one day he would trust me enough to tell me the truth. Down the other path, I could take matters into my own hands, open that box, and face whatever truth was inside, no matter how ugly it might be. It was a choice between respecting his privacy and demanding my place as his partner. A choice that could either bring us closer than ever or tear our fragile new family apart for good. So I have to ask you, what would you do if you were sitting there in the dark holding that key? What would be your next move? Do you walk away and choose to trust even when you've been lied to? Or do you open the box and face the truth no matter the consequences? Let me know in the comments below. Open the box or leave it alone. And you are definitely going to want to subscribe and hit that notification bell because in episode 4, I make my choice. And what I find inside that box, it changes everything. The truth is about to be unlocked.